If you came here to learn about Susan B. Anthony, thank you. You certainly had other choices. Susan was a Quaker and began attending Unitarian congregations when she was 30 and moved to agnosticism/atheism when she was 60. So if she's frowning on the silver dollar, it may be because of the words they put beside her mouth, "In God we trust." Or perhaps we have no pictures where she's smiling. Yeah, okay, that's better. Susan was a major suffragette. On November 5th, 1872, she became the first woman to vote in the United States. She was arrested for it 2 weeks later when the story got around because it was illegal. Her trial took place before Supreme Court Associate Justice Ward Hunt. Justice Hunt did not let Susan testify on her own behalf. He allowed statements given by her at the time of her arrest to be allowed as testimony. He explicitly ordered the jury to return a guilty verdict, refused to poll the jury afterward, and read an opinion that he had written before the trial started. The sentence was $100 fine. This was Susan's response. "May it please your honor, I shall never pay $1 of your unjust penalty. All the stock in trade I possess is a $10,000 debt incurred by publishing my paper, The Revolution, 4 years ago, the sole object of which was to educate all women to do precisely as I have done, rebel against your man-made, unjust, unconstitutional forms of law that tax, fine, imprison, and hang women while they deny them the right of representation in the government. And I shall work on with might and main to pay every dollar of that honest debt, but not a penny shall go to this unjust claim, and I shall earnestly and persistently continue to urge all women to the practical recognition of the old revolutionary maxim that resistance to tyranny is obedience to God." True to her word, she never paid the fine. The government took no collection action against her. I've read her full speech, and it's wonderful. It begins after Judge Hunt says, "Has the prisoner anything to say why sentence shall not be pronounced?" Susan says, "Yes, Your Honor, I have many things to say." The transcript after that is peppered with, "The prisoner must sit down," and "The court cannot allow it." But by gosh, Susan had her say. When the 19th Amendment was ratified at last in 1920, 48 years later, its text was, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation." It's called the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, the only U.S. amendment named for a person. Fanny Baker Ames married Charles, a Unitarian minister, and they created change wherever they went. She founded California's first suffrage society. During the so-called Long Depression, which was after the Panic of 1873, she founded the Germantown Relief Society in Philadelphia. That was the first visiting social worker service in the U.S. In 1877, she founded the New Century Club. That was one of America's first women's club, promoting science, literature, art, and the suffrage movement. In 1878, the Philadelphia Society for Organizing Charity. In 1880, the Children's Aid Society and Bureau of Information, which found rural foster homes for children in almshouses. They moved to Boston when Charles became editor of the Christian Register. That's the magazine which evolved into today's UU World. Fanny founded the Women's Auxiliary Conference of the Unitarian Church. She became the first female police inspector in Massachusetts. She helped found Simmons College, now called Simmons University, and she was a member of the Committee on Divorce Reform of the National Council of Women, and co-founded the Boston Equal Suffrage Association for Good Government. She got all that done by age 61 and still carried on for another 30 years. Jane Addams was raised Presbyterian, but she attended regularly at a Unitarian church in Chicago. Everyone wants to claim her, including me, because she's a Nobel Prize winner. In Chicago at age 29, Jane and her friend Ellen Starr founded Hull House, the first of about 400 so-called settlement houses in the United States. I quote from Wikipedia. The settlement movement was a reformist social movement beginning in the 1880s and peaking around the 1920s in England and the U.S., with a goal of getting the rich and poor in society to live more closely together in an interdependent community. Its main objective was the establishment of settlement houses in poor urban areas in which volunteer middle-class settlement workers would live, hoping to share knowledge and culture with and alleviate the poverty of their low-income neighbors, unquote. At its height, Hull House was visited by 2,000 people a week. It had a night school for adults, kindergarten classes, clubs for older children, a public kitchen, an art gallery, a coffee house, a gym, a girls' club, a bathhouse, a bookbindery, workshops, a music school, a drama group, and a library. It stayed open for 120 years, closing in 2012, I'm sorry to say, for lack of funds. Jane was a sociologist as well as a social reformer. She and her colleagues documented the geography wages of wages of nationalities and of typhoid fever. They identified the corruption and greed that caused the Chicago bureaucracy to ignore health, sanitation, and building codes. She also served as the first vice president of the Playground Association of America, fighting for free common space. Addams was an outspoken pacifist. In 1915, she became national chairman of the Women's Peace Party and was a charter member of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, which still exists today. Their dealings were pretty real. She traveled to The Hague in 1915 and met with many national leaders to discuss mediation. This was the first significant effort to end World War I. For this, and for social justice work before the war, and for ongoing efforts for peace after the war, Addams received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1931. Tom Hiram Andrews was a congressman from Maine. After defeat in a bid for U.S. Senator, he moved to the nonprofit sector. He was National Director of Win Without War, founded in 2002 in an attempt to stop the U.S. war in Iraq. I don't blame them for failing there. They continue to work in the peace movement. He was involved in Council for a Livable World, an anti-nuclear weapon group, and another peace lobby called Just Foreign Policy. In 2016, he became our guy, the CEO of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. The UUSC provides disaster relief and promotes human rights and social justice around the world. Some focuses in 2019 were a conflict in Darfur, aid after Gulf Coast hurricanes, workers' rights, and the right to clean water. When I recorded this in July 2020, their website's front page was supporting Black Lives Matter and commemorating 25 years of human rights work in Burma.